Hey everybody, welcome to my latest episode of Hunkered Down with Seth. Today we have a show that will definitely be informative, definitely be interesting, and definitely leave you better than when you started. And really, that's every time I talk with Doug Gale. He does Radio LARP. He's been doing a variety of things, just tons of stuff around the Seattle comedy community for over 15 years. Are you maybe 20? Uh,
Yeah, but not recently.
not
I have not done fuck all
Nobody has,
recently.
so you're not alone there.
No, even more recently. I haven't done comedy stuff in any kind of serious way. Not what you would consider, like local stand up, whatever, for probably 5 or more years.
Yeah, but you were always a. Whenever I talked to you, you were always a hobbyist and perfectly acceptable. Just something you do on the side.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say hobbyist in the sense that I was a realist about it, where I believe that 90% of the people who are doing it are hobbyists, but they aren't willing or are aware that that's what's happening. They
Yeah.
aren't willing to admit it, or they aren't aware that that's what's happening.
All right. So long story short, to end this intro of you, uh,
Oh, we just in the intro part?
still.
I thought we started arguing right away. Am I not on the right podcast?
Yeah. Well, anyways, anytime I asked him to do a set or a character, he was always down to do it. So, Doug Gale, thanks for being on the show. Intro over.
Down to clown, baby.
So, so Doug, first thing I want to bring up, Red Sun,
Yes.
my all-time
Yes.
favorite thing you've ever done.
Thank you.
Red Sun
I was
is
particularly proud of that.
a superhero who let himself
Yes.
go. And first of all, why? Second of all, why?
Well, the whole original start of doing the Red Sun character was because first of all, I love superhero stuff as a genre. It's one of my favorite, if not my all-time favorite genres. And I wanted to do something with a superhero. I had seen, God, I can't remember his name. He's a comedian. He does the mental health hour podcast.
Ron Funches?
He used to no. He used to do a character that was like the Republican senator, something from Ohio. Shit. Can I look online? Am I allowed to Google while we're talking?
Yeah, go ahead. We aren't fact checking anything. Literally.
Mental health happy hour.
Literally,
Mental illness happy hour.
I just.
Paul Gilmartin. Boom! There we go.
Yeah.
So I saw Paul Gilmartin do this character at Bumbershoot. And it was this Republican senator from Ohio kind of thing. And he talked for probably like 5 or so minutes, as a normal stand-up set. And it was very funny. It's a satirical character, obviously.
Yeah.
He's kind of making fun of Republican points of view and whatnot. And then he's like, okay, let's pull the lights up, and then I'll take questions from the audience. And he starts answering questions. And afterwards, I was like, oh, I love this kind of concept. I would really like to do something like this in stand-up. And what I had learned from watching him was having kind of like a set thing, a rehearsed thing up front to kind of introduce everyone to the character and give people an idea of what you were doing and what you're about, to give them a framework to ask questions. And then in that question period, you will eventually have questions that people ask over and over, or you could probably even assume a couple of questions that will get asked that you have like really snappy answers for. And then the rest of it is just kind of trying to be, improv-y, clever in the moment to answer them.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it was sort of like this revelation of like, oh, this is a great way to do a character. The structure and the format of doing the character that way was really immediately appealing to me. And watching him do it, I was like, oh, I think I see the pattern here. I can see the formula of how to do that. So I started to think, like, what would be a character that I would want to do. And I love superhero stuff, as I started to say, as a genre.
Yeah.
And so I just started to hit on this idea of doing a superhero thing. And the context that I wanted to do it in was that I really wanted the superhero world that I was creating for this character to live in to be an analogy to stand-up comedy in general. So it's sort of like if superheroes were a form of stand-up comedy, of performers and of entertainment. And then the Red Sun is the example of someone who had kind of started locally, gotten a little bit of heat, moved to like the big city, like New York City, in the 80s, and kind of had a bit of a flash in the pan moment, and then his career had nosedived after that, and then in his later years he'd gone back to Seattle, where he's kind of semi-retired and not really well known, and kind of like bitter about the whole process, and has a lot of drunken opinions that he'll yell at people about. Is generally sort of an unpleasant person, but still at his core, he should still be considered at least somewhat of a good person, as it were.
So Dwayne Goad.
So Dwayne Goad.
Love you, Dwayne, by the way.
Dwayne Goad, if he had moved to New York and then, had joined the Avengers for a brief period of time.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah,
so that was the main idea behind it. That was the impetus for doing it. And then the rest of it was sort of like, oh, look, we have these weird costume towels at our house. And then then it all sort of flowed from there, because this towel that I would wear sort of had like a luchador red mask with a cape attached to it. So you're just wearing this cowl and a cape, and then I would do that with no shirt. And then, because I'm a bigger guy, so that's always funny. And then the joke would be basically that I had a heat-resistant costume, because normal clothes will burn off of me, but that I got drunk and lost it somewhere, and so now I have to walk around shirtless.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I sort of have that with my spelling bee bit, where have you seen my spelling bee bit?
Yeah. Because you're engaging the audience in what you're doing.
Exactly. Where I do the crowd work up front, and then just yell at them. And I wrote that just because I wanted an excuse to yell at the audience. So.
Yes.
that was my whole plot for that. But Red Sun, always fun to watch. Who are the villains you mentioned? Captain Nazi.
No, but that would be a good one.
There was one I remember, like Commander Nazi. Definitely something Nazi.
Commander Nazi? No. Well, at one point I did mention Robo Hitler 3000, as that was one of the villains. He lives on the moon. Robo Hitler 3000. Him and the Super Clan have teamed up to build an army of Nazi robots.
The KKKK. They have an extra K.
Yeah, the extra K. Super K.
Ooh, KKK 1000.
There was... I think there was like Professor Antagonist. That might have been another villain.
That's great.
It's been a while. Shocktopus, that was one of my favorite ones. Shocktopus is a giant squid that has electricity powers. So it's also funny because it's a squid, not an octopus.
Yeah.
But there's no good squid puns with electricity, so he went with Shocktopus.
Let's see.
Yeah, and then for the bit when I was on stage, that was one of the centerpieces of the bit, is that I would do like, here's my origin story, here's this, and then, oh boy, have I done a lot in my career. I've, worked with the best and fought with the best, including, and then I would just go as long as I could reading a list of silly superhero, supervillain pun names.
Yeah, super cool. Oh man, it's always fun. Now,
But that's what you mentioned, Radio LARP at the beginning, and that was one of the things that Ryan, Casey, and I expanded on when we started doing the radio play, genre fiction comedy radio play podcast, Radio LARP. Is we said, let's take the Red Sun and kind of like really expand it a little bit. Let's do like a radio play that takes place in his world with him in it, and then some of the other characters in it. And so we wrote and recorded 3 or 4 episodes of that.
Yeah.
It's been about 5 years or so. I'm actually writing more episodes that hopefully I'll be able to record here during this stay-at-home pandemic. But yeah, I loved that character obviously, and then wanted to do more with it. So my favorite part about that is that, like I was saying, the whole inspiration for it came from Paul Gilmartin, seeing Paul Gilmartin doing a character at Bumbershoot. And then since doing that character, I performed as the Red Sun in that Q&A style at Bumbershoot. And then also, the last time I was at Bumbershoot, we did a version of the radio play, The Red Sun, at Bumbershoot as well.
Oh, cool.
So one of the episodes in our podcast feed was recorded at Bumbershoot, and that was, I mean, it's the local comedy stage. Let's make no illusions about this. It's not the same stage as Paul Martin, but just the idea that I was inspired by something I saw at Bumbershoot, and then, years later was able to bring the results of that inspiration to the Bumbershoot stage twice, I think.
Cinderella story.
Makes me pretty happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby!
Definitely. That reminds me a lot of James Adomian with his George Bush.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was, I had come to realize that I had accidentally backed into, just by watching Paul Gilmartin, like, this is kind of like a formula for doing this kind of thing,
Yeah, definitely. And you're not the first, you're definitely not the last, so...
No, and I never want to give any kind of impression like, look with the secret eye in your practice.
Yeah.
It's like when I was 10 and I was watching The Tonight Show and I saw some dude juggling, and I was like, holy shit, that's really impressive. But he was juggling like crazy, like a lot of stuff. But then casually during the whatever his segment was, they showed him juggling 3 things. And I watched it for like 10 minutes or so, and I was like, or whatever, not 10 minutes, however long the segment was. And I was like, oh, juggling, this is how you juggle 3 things, back and forth between 2 hands. It's not like it is in a cartoon where they show it like in a circle,
Yeah.
You can, first of all, you can juggle in a circle, and it's a lot harder. And so then I just sat down and spent like 2 days trying to practice throwing things back and forth. And I basically wound up teaching myself how to do simple basic juggling from watching The Tonight Show. Did I discover juggling? No. Are there books written about it that could tell you the same thing? Absolutely.
Yep.
So this is just the same thing of watching a pattern and then being able to understand it and break it down and then replicate the pattern.
That's why I love talking with you. You ask yourself the hard-hitting questions. I just get to sit back and relax. So.
Yeah, it's easy time. Well, you at first were like, we'll talk about what we want to talk about. It's like, I don't want to talk about anything.
Yeah.
But then you mentioned Red Sun, which is one of those rare things that I actually, could talk about.
Yeah. Well, Radio LARP, getting back on topic, you have, I saw a couple years ago, like, this had to be 8 years ago, 7 to 8 years ago, like a space western type show that you had.
Yeah, so that was the first incarnation of it. Even before it was Radio LARP, it was a live, sort of like, I guess you would call it like a play or a mini play that we did, and we performed it at Scratch Deli. It was me, Ryan Casey, and Albert Kirshner were the writers and performers, where we would write the script and then we'd invite our friends and fellow comedians to perform it. But we would do like costumes to a degree, and then we would make props, and all the props. One of the things we decided on early on was all the props were going to be made out of cardboard or like beer cans and that kind of thing. So it was a real like hokey rinky-dink thing. But then we're we're memorizing lines and performing it live to an audience. And then we did 3 of those, and then that kind of fell apart for various reasons. And then I had suggested that we transition from doing that live thing into doing radio plays, where now we didn't have to make props. Now we didn't have to have like 3 rehearsals a month for 10 different people and coordinating schedules. And of course, it's local comedy, so no one's getting paid.
Yep.
So it was a lot of a commitment. But then if it's just like a live reading of a script, then we would only ask people to commit to like 1 pre-show read-through, and then we would do it live, and that wound up being a lot easier. So we were able to then, and that's when we rebranded it as Radio Alarm, because Flight Space 7 was the name of the sci-fi thing that you're talking about.
Yep.
And then I didn't want to make it like just Flight Space 7. I wanted it to be a little more open so that we could explore other genres. So that's when it was Radio Alarm presenting Flight Space 7 as a radio play. And that was me, once again, stealing concepts from something else, which at the time was the Thrilling Adventure Hour podcast.
Yeah,
which was a radio play podcast that did a variety of different stories. And it's like, oh, this is exactly the model that we would want to be able to do. So we did Flight Space 7 and did 4 episodes of that, and then did like 3 episodes of The Red Sun. And then we wrote and recorded and have not yet released, and it's been 6 years, a post-apocalyptic wasteland episode, separate storyline as well.
Well, I can't think of a better time to do that right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because at the time that we wrote it, Trump had not won the election. He was running, and it was early on, and I thought it would be funny if we mentioned, like, this is what will happen if Trump will win. And then we decided not to go with that. We didn't make an explicit mention of it in the podcast, and I have now come to regret that.
Yeah. Let's talk about something you didn't plagiarize.
Oh, there is a very short list for that.
No, your local elections rundown. I specifically remember.
Oh, God. That's a long time ago.
That is a long time ago. I mean, but that's what really, I would say that would be your most lasting impression in comedy, just from the stand-up point of view. Because
that put me on the map, baby.
Exactly, and look at you now. But
yeah, that was the voter pamphlet that came out.
Yeah, every time a voter pamphlet came out, you would go on stage, usually during one of Yoram's shows, and just do the rundown.
Right. Yeah, because Yoram Bauman was doing the thing called nonprofit comedy,
Yeah.
which was brilliant in concept, where every week the show would be a benefit for a different nonprofit, but the onus was on the nonprofit to bring the audience. So Yoram would basically, initially he would contact nonprofits, and then once it was pretty, up and going and word had gotten out, nonprofits would contact him. And then they would say, we want to do a show, and then he would provide, a stock of vetted comedians who he thought would work with the tone of a show like that. And then us as comedians got to do, the same kind of acts week after week for different nonprofits. So you didn't have to just keep coming up with new stuff or whatever. And it was an off night. It was a Tuesday night, and for the most part, with some exceptions, there were decent audiences, and then occasionally, really, really well attended shows. And yeah, that was during that period of time. I had fallen into sort of a boredom and a frustration with my stand-up material, and I was just looking for something else to do. And I happened to have been reading the voter pamphlet, and then there were a couple of entries in it that just made me laugh, and I wanted to structure a set around that. And then I just kind of poured through the whole pamphlet to find, were there any other things that I could call out? Either some of it was just straight up making fun of someone's picture,
Yep.
And then sometimes it was the choices of the stuff that they had written. And then thankfully in Washington, just like everywhere, we've got a couple of I guess you would say, perennial candidates, eternal candidates, like Good Space Guy
Good
and
space
Mike
guy.
the Mover,
Yeah.
who are just sort of like, they are really out there. So that was like always fodder for the machine. And then it was just a matter of like test running it and then figuring out what people thought were the funniest and then structuring it so that I could kind of have a good flow to the set as far as building up and then ending strong with it. Yeah, and that was fun, and I really enjoyed that. But it was weird because then at a certain point in time, it kind of falls out of favor, not favor, but it becomes untimely because it's like, well, there's been a few more elections since then, and some of this stuff was contemporaneous, and then I did try to do another. So for the most part, it was the one pamphlet that I did that I had kind of locked in with those people. And then after maybe a year or 2 years, I wanted to switch it up, and so I tried another one, and it couldn't recapture that magic, baby. Just didn't have the same oomph. So then I kind of dropped it.
Oh, that's too bad, because the Good Space Guy, he was the guy who wanted to abolish rent, right?
You mean, I'm not saying he doesn't have some good ideas.
I know. I mean, we're literally talking about implementing that, and he was on that train first.
Space Guy right now. Yeah, but he also had a lot of weird ideas, though.
Oh, it's Seattle. Everybody's got weird ideas. Yeah. All right, so let's round third and bring this baby home.
Land this shit.
Yeah, is there any plans or any fun ideas that you want to implement coming up?
Well, weirdly, because now we're gonna round third by moving back to first, that me and Ryan have been working on new scripts for Radio Lark because it's something that we miss. Part of it, he's since moved to LA, so it does make some of the implementation things more difficult and coordination of stuff where, it was a little bit easier when we could basically meet every week and hang out,
Oh, yeah.
get fucked up and write stupid radio plays. But what I had recently been thinking about wanting to try is writing some short scripts, writing some short little pieces that take place in our already established world, and then sending the scripts out to various comedian friends that are quarantined and just having them like record your dialogue on a phone, like just in some quiet space, read just your lines and then send them in, and then trying to edit them together and seeing, if we could make something with that.
Oh, well, that'd be fun. Not saying I'm volunteering my services, but I got a lot of time on my hands, just to let you know.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll add you to the list of literally everyone I know that has a phone and free time.
Yeah. All right, so literally last question. I had it, then I forgot it.
I will do that.
Got it. What? Now like I said in the beginning, you've been around for the better part of 2 decades, just around the Seattle comedy scene. Both as someone who tried to take it seriously, and I say seriously with quotes, and just enjoying. The way I see it, you enjoy yourself pretty much more than anybody, just being on the comedy scene. What is the craziest show you've been a part of? Just some show that just either started out crazy or turned into something crazy.
Oh my god, I don't know. I mean, I have such a bad memory of stuff. I would need someone else to remind me of some sort of like crazy show that I had been on. So I'm sorry, nothing's coming to mind.
Nope.
Of something that I did that like went off the rails. But this is the kind of thing where I'll be like, I can't really think of anything, and then someone else will tell me like, what about that show where that one dude like caught on fire, and then I was like, oh yeah, that show.
I mean, you could always.
Oh no, I can think of one. I can think of one that was. It wasn't the craziest thing that I had that had happened, but it stands out. I was hosting for Nick DiPaolo at Giggles, and the power had gone out multiple times during the show. So that in itself was like a weird thing. And then, he's a trooper, and he kept going. But then also the crowd was kind of unruly. And then some incident happened that was related to heckling. And Nick DiPaolo got upset at one point and then jumped into the crowd.
Jesus.
And allegedly took a swing at someone, and he might have thrown a glass from the stage into the audience, allegedly, and then like perhaps the wrong person had gotten hit, and then that caused another fight, and then allegedly someone wound up getting beat up in an alley, not Nick DiPaolo, but allegedly an audience member wound up getting beat up in the alley behind Giggles by other members of the audience. So that was weird.
Wow, or you could just defer to a Jeff Rousseau story. But yeah, that's a crazy one. Well, we're going to wrap up here. Doug, thank you for being on Hunkered Down with Seth. Always
You're
great.
welcome, Seth.
Always great talking with you. There is one thing I want to promote. That Doug is either directly or indirectly involved with. Check out Ugly Baby in LaRue. I don't know if they're still open. I don't think they're essential, but they have an Etsy store, right?
Yeah, and it's not LaRue, Ugly Baby LaRue. Now we're just Ugly Baby Shop.
Ugly Baby Shop, okay.
Yeah, LaRue has moved on, and she has her own separate shop now. And yeah, we are closed, but we still have our products available online at Ugly Baby Shop.
UglyBabyShop.com. Definitely check that out.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. So that's the episode.